In the heart of a small, picturesque town, nestled among rolling hills and lush forests, there lay a cemetery ancient and solemn, its weathered headstones standing sentinel over the resting places of generations past. By day, the graveyard was a place of quiet contemplation, visited by mourners paying their respects to the departed. But by night, when the moon hung low in the sky and the shadows grew long, the cemetery took on a different aura tinged with mystery and foreboding. For as long as anyone could remember, strange tales had circulated about the graveyard. Whispers of ghostly apparitions and eerie phenomena had passed from generation to generation, fueling the town's collective imagination and instilling a sense of unease in those who dared to venture near after dark. Among the most chilling of these stories were those of the midnight visitor seen to vigils who claimed to have heard voices calling to them from the depths of the graveyard, beckoning them to enter its hallowed grounds under the cover of night. Some spoke of feeling drawn to the cemetery by an inexplicable force, while others described encountering shadowy figures lurking among the tombstones, their eyes gleaming with an otherworldly light. Despite the warnings of the townsfolk, there were always those who were curious or perhaps foolish enough to venture into the graveyard after hours, seeking to uncover the truth behind the whispers that echoed through the night. But more often than not, they would vanish without a trace, their fate remaining a mystery to all but the graveyard itself. It was against this backdrop of mystery and intrigue that our story begins. With a group of friends gathered around a campfire on the outskirts of town. Among them were Sarah, a fearless young woman with a penchant for adventure, and her friends, eager to test their mettle against the unknown. As the fire crackled and sparks danced into the night sky, the conversation turned to the graveyard, the subject of countless tales and legends that had captivated their imaginations since childhood. Sarah, ever the skeptic, scoffed at the idea of supernatural forces lurking among the tombstones, while her friends exchanged nervous glances, their superstitions getting the better of them. But when one of the group, a brash young man named Jake, suggested that they visit the graveyard that very night to prove once and for all that there was nothing to fear, Sarah's curiosity was piqued. Despite her misgivings, she found herself agreeing to the plan, eager to uncover the truth behind the whispers that had haunted the town for so long. And so, under the cover of darkness, the group set out for the graveyard, their footsteps echoing against the cobblestone streets as they made their way through the sleeping town. The air was thick with anticipation, a palpable tension hanging over them as they approached the wrought iron gates that marked the entrance to the cemetery. As they stepped through the gates and into the graveyard beyond, a sense of unease settled over the group, the weight of centuries of history pressing down upon them like a heavy blanket. The moon cast an eerie glow over the tombstones, casting long shadows that seemed to dance and sway in the flickering light. For a while, they wandered among the graves, their senses on high alert for any sign of the supernatural. But aside from the occasional rustle of leaves or creak of branches in the wind, the graveyard remained eerily silent, a fact that only served to heighten their unease. Just as they were about to give up and return to the safety of their campfire, Sarah heard something, a faint whisper, barely audible above the rustling of the leaves. At first, she dismissed it as a trick of the wind, but as she listened closer, she realized that the voice was coming from somewhere deep within the cemetery. Intrigued, Sarah followed the sound, her friends trailing close behind. As they drew nearer to the source of the whispering, they noticed that the air around them seemed to grow colder, sending shivers down their spines. Finally, they reached a secluded corner of the graveyard, a forgotten plot, hidden away from prying eyes, its headstones weathered and crumbling with age. It was there, amidst the shadows and the silence, that they found what they had been searching for. At the center of the plot stood a single, solitary grave, a grave unlike any they had ever seen before. Its headstone was weathered and worn, the inscription faded with time. But even in the dim light of the moon, they could make out the name engraved upon it, Eleanor Hastings, beloved daughter. As Sarah approached the grave, she felt a strange sensation wash over here, a feeling of sadness and longing that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. And then, she heard it whispering, growing louder and more insistent with each passing moment. "Help me," the voice pleaded, its words barely audible above the sound of the wind. "I am trapped here, cursed to wander these grounds for all eternity. Please, set me free." With a sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach, Sarah realized that the voice belonged to Eleanor Hastings, a young woman who had vanished without a trace from the town over a century ago, her disappearance shrouded in mystery and speculation ever since. Determined to uncover the truth, Sarah and her friends set to work, digging frantically at the earth in search of answers. And as they unearthed the secrets buried beneath the surface, they uncovered a tale of betrayal and heartache, a tale that had been lost to time, but never forgotten by those who had been wronged. It turned out that Eleanor Hastings had been in love with a young man from the town, a man who had promised her the world and then abandoned her when she needed him most. Heartbroken and alone, Eleanor had taken her own life, cursing her lover's name as she slipped away into the darkness. But even in death, Eleanor's spirit had refused to rest, bound to the graveyard by the bitterness and rage that consumed her soul. And so, she had lingered for over a century, her whispers echoing through the night, her presence haunting all who dared to trespass upon her domain. As Sarah and her friends laid Eleanor's spirit to rest, a sense of peace settled over the graveyard, the whispers fading into the night as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon. And as they made their way back to town, they knew that they had uncovered a truth far more profound than they could have ever imagined, a truth that would forever change the way they saw the world around them. For in the heart of the graveyard, amidst the whispers and the shadows, they had discovered that some mysteries were meant to be unearthed, that sometimes the past had a way of reaching out from beyond the grave to make itself known.